What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Robert Rants. I am here live inside the bunker, and I'm going to talk to you about the 5 principles of fitness. Okay, 5 principles of fitness. Cool little article. I put the link up here for you too if you want to take a look at this, where they go through the overload principle, fit, specificity, rest, recovery, and the use it or lose it. I'm also going to give you references on articles that kind of support each one of these. As we go through them and just give you a little tidbit about each one, and you can kind of take a look-see for yourself. Are you implementing these as best you can? And if not, maybe we should consider this. So your first one is the overload principle, and I will tell you as the author, this article, Nick Tuminello, and of the other one that I referenced as well, both really emphasize, like, this is really the key one. This is the big one, probably the one that our foundation of everything that we put together here is built on. Now, let me say that with exception of social facilitation, which is a principle to speak of. And let's talk about that real quick since it's not on the list. Social facilitation was coined by Norman Triplett back in the 1800s at some point, where he was working with cyclists. And this was back in the day where cyclists didn't go out on like grand tours and such as much in the in the public eye. It was more about racing indoors on a track. And so they would train individually. Okay, if you've seen the sport, they do a bunch of laps, I don't know how many, and then when they like tag in their partner, the partner does a lap with them, and then they are off. They basically take the baton, and then off they go. What Norman noticed was that the cyclists would get on the track, and of course they would get a little bit slower as they would go because they were starting to get tired. But then when the other person came on, that other person would encourage them by their sheer presence, and the one that was getting tired, it was about to go off, their split would go back up. So their presence simply made them work a little bit harder because they were there, okay? When you think about it, that idea, social facilitation, really is the principle in which our profession is built on. Individuals either don't know what to do, they don't know how to do it, or they're not motivated to do it. And so we bring in the accountability, we bring in the knowledge of how to do everything, and we bring in what to do. With all of that kind of collectively being taught, the other part of that is that our presence, specifically our presence, will simply make somebody show up, make them work a little harder, and make them pay attention to what is going on, okay? So the social facilitation principle, if you will, is really what personal training is. Because I'm here, because we've agreed to meet, and you're going to get in here and do, as I've best described a program and created one for you, you're going to put your best foot forward and try harder, as opposed to if I just sent it to you and said, do this on your own. My simple presence makes you work harder. Now, if we add another person to that, it works as well. If we add another person, it works as well. But if you get too many people, there is a point of negative return where there are so many people and not enough eyes watching that now I feel like I'm just lost in the mush. And because nobody's specifically watching me, I don't work as hard as I could. And they've proven this one through tug of wars, where individuals they will all think they're being charted on how much they can pull, but really they're only measuring one person. And they'll get on a rope by themselves and they'll pull and pull, and they're like, oh, you can pull 800 pounds. Then they put a whole bunch of other people on the rope with them, and they're like, go, pull, pull, pull. And no one else is really pulling. It's just that one person, and they won't pull 900 because they think, oh, I've got all these other people here with me. I don't have to work as hard. We can do this, together as a unit. So at some point, you kind of get washed, like there's too many people. Social facilitation doesn't work as well. So that's where semi-private training versus group or group exercise or big classes and such, they kind of change a little bit. There's still accountability, fun with your friends, all that. I'm not shitting on it. I'm just saying it's a little bit different when it's just 2 to 3 people and one coach, and your effort will perform. So with that all being said, okay, and these 5 principles, these are all the ones that really kind of matter. And overload is going to be the one that probably affects us the most, and it's going to overlap and affect all the other ones as well. And generally speaking, if you're training for improved power, improved strength, or improved endurance, any of these, you have to provide an overload in which your body is going to adapt to. Okay, the said principle dives right into this. Specific adaptations to an imposed demand. I am going to lift weights that my body struggles with to lift now. My body, after multiple efforts of doing this day after day after day, will recognize, okay, we're going to keep doing this all the time. We had better create more muscle fiber to help this person lift this weight, because apparently he's doing it every day now. So that's the specific adaptation. Let's build more muscle to the imposed demand. He's constantly lifting these weights. Every day he's doing this, let's get stronger. And all of a sudden, 15 pounds isn't so difficult anymore. I could go to 17 and a half. That's the new challenge. That's the new imposed demand. Specifically, I will adapt, and it goes again. And the same thing goes if I'm moving something lighter and quicker. And it's like, I got to move this as fast as I can. Well, I can move it in 3 seconds. If I keep training, I should get more dynamic. My fibers should learn to turn over faster to get more explosive. Now I can move it in 2.75 seconds instead of 3. So the overload, these are good overloads, okay? Not so like I'm overloaded, I'm burning out, I'm gonna, it's not that. It's I'm overloaded to a point where a stimulus is created that spurs change, I change, we improve, I get better, and this continues over and over and over again. Now envision a plant that has never been watered, that is now watered for the first time. How big of a gain will it make? Huge. But eventually, that plant will only get so big. And so the smallest, most minute little changes can be very successful. The reason I'm saying this is the overload principle will have great return in the beginning. And as you get closer to your ideal peak, perfect perfection of whatever it is you're training for, your 100% gains that you had in the beginning. I could do 10, now I can do 20, I could do 30, I could do 40. Like you'll see these huge jumps will turn into 2.5 pounds or 1 pound gains, right? When you get really towards the top. So kind of keep that in mind. This works for strength gain, for power production, and cardiovascular health, how hard you can push yourself when you're running, rucking, etc. Okay? Now, the FIT principle stands for frequency, intensity, time, and type. This specifically kind of looks at all the volume variations that you're doing with your training. How often should we be training at one intensity? Should it always be super hard? Can there be some days where we're a little lower in effort and tempo, but we're working with higher load, so we need more recovery? So it depends on how much time you're going to put in and what type of training that you are investing in. It is very difficult to get stronger, get bigger, get more endured, and get leaner all at the same time. So a lot of times we have to break those up and say, during this section of time, the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever it might be, this type of training is going to be committed to 60 minutes a day at a higher intensity, and we're going to do that 5 days a week and try to get leaner. And then after 8 weeks, we go, okay, cool, we've got ourselves leaner, and now let's try to put on some more bulk or whatever the goal is. Yes, you can train for all of these at the same time, but will you make huge gains? Probably not. There'll be very small gains, where if you pick one, maybe two, and depending on how you do it, again, I don't want to get too deep into this. It gives you an idea of the specific nature in this, in which you can like target each one of these, but we have to answer these questions. How often, what intensity, how much time do I commit to it, and what type of training philosophy am I implementing? Okay, so the FIT principle has a lot to do with that. Now we're gonna look specifically at the type of training you're going to implement. And you have to ask yourself, what goal am I pursuing? How specific is this goal? Well, my training philosophy, volume selections, frequency, all of that needs to match how specific this is. The more specific I am, the more appropriate I can build this model to pursue what it is that I am trying to achieve, the more likely I am to achieve it quicker, efficiently, etc. So specificity can be looked at in a couple of ways. Like if I play baseball and I decide I hold a bat and I swing a bat and I hit a ball, if I use a lighter bat and I can teach my body to go faster, that'll help me with speed. But if I use a bigger bat, it'll get me stronger and I'll hit the ball further, right? So we think if I could just get weighted bats and swing them over and over again in the weight room, and I'm right-handed, so I'm just gonna swing from the right side over and over again in the weight room, then I will specifically be training to be a better baseball player. And that's actually inaccurate, okay? The lighter bat that you can move faster will throw off all of your timing. The heavier bat that you move slower will make you overly muscular and throw off your timing. So ideally, we don't want to mimic what we do in the weight room to what we do out in the field of play. We want to look at the field of play movement actions and say, how can I train in here to improve those actions? So even though this is a dynamic rotational movement pattern, I would do snatches and cleans and bounds and different plyometric exercises. And then with lighter, more dynamic, explosive type movements, I could do lateral chops and medicine ball throws and work on my transverse rotation and power production. But all of this, the cleans along a sagittal plane, you know, the snatches along a sagittal plane, like a lot of these actions, even though they're not rotational, torque producing, functional strength that's going to apply to me hitting a baseball, it's going to make my body become a more dynamic, explosive movement and or vessel, and that will apply to the movement, right? If I can get more dynamic in my ability to bound and skip and jump and throw and pull, then I'm overall more athletic. I can take that athletic ability and transfer it into my ability to swing a bat and hit the ball further, okay? So when we say specificity, we don't mean to mimic sport in the weight room. We need to train specifically for sport, specifically for fat loss, specifically for limitation and overcoming an injury, right? The more specific we are, the better the programming will be. Now, again, going back to the watered plant, like anything will help those that are just beginning. But if I want to get that much better, remember we talked about training to the peak, I've got to get more specific and more specific to keep those gains going up. And when we do specific training, it's very important not to forget about the basics. Why? Because the basics work really, really well. When we get too detailed, too specific, and a lot of times we kind of lose sight of the foundation of what we're building towards. We get a little bit too into the woods and we get a little bit too focused on the little nitty-gritty things that we think are making a huge difference, and we forget about the foundational stuff that makes huge differences. All right, rest and recovery. So a couple of things here. Yes, we need proper sleep. Yes, we need to participate in recovery-based activities, and those activities can be physical therapy, acupuncture, acupressure, massage, scraping, cupping, floating, salt bath, floating, meditation, whatever it might be, whatever it is that works well for you that assists you in recovering, you need to participate in that often and learn through your body. Hey, I do great when I do 20 minutes in the sauna every night with a cold plunge right after. This is a great recovery thing for me. 6.5 hours of sleep every night as opposed to 8 or opposed to 5 is just my right number. I have found that this works best for me. Like, you guys need to take the time to learn those things. And in most cases, or in many cases, more does not necessarily mean better. Like, oh, I'm exhausted and I don't feel like I'm recovered. I need to sleep 12 hours a day. In many cases, that can backfire on you. It's what works best for you, not just more, okay? So keep that in mind. When we also look at rest and recovery, we're talking about between periods. So if you're going between a training cycle or a training session, like a Monday lift and then a Wednesday lift, if you're training full body, we need to have that 24 to 48 hours in between to allow our body to recover, to be ready. But if you're doing a split routine, upper body Monday, lower body Tuesday, you can do 24 hours and be fine, right? So it depends, again, how specific the program and how you're splitting it, but giving yourself rest and recovery between. We do not want to overtrain you. That's different than overload you, okay? Overload's a good thing. Overtrain is not such a good thing. And the obsessive compulsive mind, like mine, can get very addicted into our training and is very prone to overtraining. So this is something you need to keep a leash on. Make sure you are getting yourself enough recovery, enough sleep, so you maximize your ability to train on a daily basis. And then to wrap this up is probably the most simple one, which truly is the use it or lose it principle, meaning that if you are not going to train and use your muscles to be dynamic and explosive, you will no longer be dynamic and explosive. If you're not going to train and use your muscles to be strong, you won't be strong. If you're not going to train your cardiovascular system to be well endured, you won't be well endured. And I know that sounds super simple, but for the 18 to 40-year-old, a lot of times we just take for granted that we're young, that we'll bounce back, that I still got it, that I'm the weekend warrior. And we pop out there at 32 after 14 years of not doing anything since high school. And yeah, I can still shoot hoops and play with the guys. And 2 minutes in, ruptured Achilles, blown out back, right? Now you guys think, oh, how often does that happen? I got a list of clients that that's happened to. I have so many injured weekend warriors who have not used it for a while, have lost it, but still think they got it and go back to use it. And they're like, I remember the day I was a 3-point shooting champion of the world and I got this double, thing with my thing. I don't even know the fucking terms. Anyway, they're so good at this, they just think I'm still there. And your body has now lost it. Sarcopenia, as we talk about, 10 to 14 days to have a negative effect back onto the body. So we're talking about years or a decade that you haven't used something and you're like, I'm gonna go out and run the court now. Oh, I used to be a hurdler. I'm gonna hop out there and teach my daughter how to run hurdles. You had better train for a couple of weeks, if not a month or two, before doing that, or else torn groin, ruptured Achilles, blown out back, like something bad is going to happen. You have to use these things or else you're going to lose them. And we're talking about the most dynamic movements of jumping over a hurdle to the most simplistic things of hinging and picking something up off the floor. Okay? Your body must practice and maintain and strength train to keep your abilities to do these movements. From range of motion to power production to balance, all of this is all encompassed in this one. It brings us to our last little mindset here in just the last minute. When we talk about the longevity curve of life, this comes from Dr. Peter Attia, and we talk about our body's ability to either simply live untrained, unconditioned, uninteracted, and just live our life at a constant decline in quality, and somewhere around 65 to 70, we pass away. Then we live the same life, but right before we pass away, we have a huge medical intervention, and it extends our life out. This blue line, it extends our life out even 5 or 10 years longer. However, the quality of life is so low because we're so ill, we're so sick, but medications and surgeries and such keep me alive. Is it really worth living? Yes, I'm living longer, but am I living well? Questionable. Where all of these principles we just talked about are feeding back to the red line. I want to keep you as capable and able and strong and positive and mentally aware and all that until you're 90, okay? And living the life at its highest quality. And then at 90, there start to be a little tape. By 92, you simply die, okay? And what I mean by that is that you, instead of getting sick at 65 and suffering, or sick at 65 and just dying, you lived great until you were 90. And then of course, we're all gonna have a taper off eventually towards the end. But how good of quality of life? These principles address all of that, okay? We don't want to be the black line. We don't want to be the blue line. We want to be that red line. And these principles, when acted upon with a very good diet, proper hydration, everything else we like to preach, it'll keep you and moving in that direction of a higher quality. My name is Robert Linkle. This is trainingtheolderadult.com. If you guys have any other questions, feel free, comment below. I am happy to help out. Head over to trainingtheolderadult.com. Check out TOA Select. See all the other things we have. My YouTube channel, Robert Linkle. Instagram, Robert Linkle. Facebook, Robert Linkle. I am more than happy to help anybody out. I love you guys. I hope you're doing well, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.